welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this month. This is going to be the overview for the general astrology for the month of June 2024. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, click the bell button below, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Any interaction with the channel helps this video get out there into YouTube. Other astrology lovers can see it and it helps my channel grow. So I appreciate your guys' support. Just a few reminders. We also have the June 2024 horoscopes for the 12 rising signs live on my videos. Maybe I'll tag it or you guys can find it in my library. But if you want to take a deeper look on how this is impacting your sun, moon, or rising sign, make sure you check that video out. I give you all the insights and how it's impacting you personally for the month ahead. Equally, make sure you're subscribed so that way you can see the other videos that we have going on throughout the month. We have new and full moon reports. If we have retrograde planets, we do videos on that, astro weathers, and much, much more. All right, so let's take a brief view, kind of like a zoomed out kind of look at the transits of the month. We are going to be taking a look at June, where we have planets that are moving through the sign of Gemini. Around week 3, we're going to start seeing planets ingressing into Cancer. So if you happen to be a June Gemini or Cancer and it's your birthday, happy birthday to you guys. I hope it's a good one. But this is primarily where we're going to be taking a look at the transits for the month ahead. So let me get this ready here. I've got it already ready with Gemini on the rising, so that seems appropriate. They're making their announcement. There we go. Let's make this the right setting before we get going. So we're going to be taking a look at a number of planets moving through Gemini. You know, the early part of the month, we're going to see the Sun, Venus, Jupiter, and actually Mercury all kind of moving through that sign. And we will start to see those planets also ingress into Cancer around the 3rd week. So there's going to be a very strong early June Gemini mercurial kind of signature in the skies. We're going to see a stellium of planets moving through there. So you want to get familiar with which house Gemini is in your horoscope. We got a new moon there. We're going to have a number of Cazimis there, and Jupiter is now in this sign. So it's all about communication, learning, right? Kind of weighing our options, seeing that there is more of a need to communicate, share, and kind of speak out. Beautiful transits right off the bat at the beginning of the month that are great for, launching new websites, podcasts, communicating, writing new things, taking new courses, planning trips, all that fun stuff. I'll give you guys my most and least favorite days in just a second. We are also going to see that Jupiter is now in Gemini. So that ingress just happened recently. I did a video on that for you guys, more kind of generally, but my last Astro Weather touched on the Jupiter in Gemini transit and how that's going to be impacting the 12 signs. This is also enhancing communication and anything relating to expanding our mind. Really, that's what Jupiter in Gemini is going to be doing. It'll be here for the next 12 months. So even when we experience a retrograde, Jupiter will still stay in this sign. So really until up and about the spring of 2025, Jupiter will be enhancing anything that is connecting to vehicles, gadgets, languages, technology, applications, all of that fun stuff. So if you happen to be a Gemini sun, moon, or rising, that means that there's new things on the horizon for you. You're a little bit more optimistic, probably a whole lot happier, and you're going to be seeing the bright side of life. Right off the bat, we will see Jupiter form some very strong trines to Pluto in Aquarius. Mercury is going to come in and make that trine as well. So I really feel like this is really wonderful for powerful communication, going in deep, relaying information, really great for networking opportunities, really great for, bringing light to something that is connected to changing the way that we communicate or connect with the world. So if you're wanting to launch like a new campaign, if you want to make a big statement, if you want to launch a new like YouTube or anything relating to information or media, that's going to be a wonderful time to do that. Now, as we get into mid-month, we are going to notice that there's a number of planets that are going to be going through Gemini that will be forming squares to planets in Pisces. This is called mutable squares. So essentially, if Gemini is all about communication and curiosity and information, it's about media, it's about things that we read in the news or in the newspaper. It's also going to be about, I think, like news anchors or radio hosts, and some challenges that they are going to be dealing with when it comes to uncovering truth. After all, Jupiter is about truth, so there's going to be some challenges as we see some opening squares between transits in Gemini to both Saturn as well as Neptune in Pisces. So mutable squares are always about change, right? I think they navigate these squares a little bit better maybe than the fixed or the cardinal signs. Certainly we see some bumps in the road when we experience squares to Saturn. We can feel a little bit more lonely or a little bit more discouraged. We can see some delays and some challenges also with clarity or keeping the faith. Then as we see planets come into a square with Neptune, we're going to see that there can be some issues, relating to clarity. We're definitely going to need to read the fine print, watch for things that are going to get clouded, watch for misinformation, illusions, limitations to communication, or travel in some way. Now, I've said in several videos now, this is an important time to watch because as these squares are squaring off with both Saturn and Neptune, it's going to kind of mirror down the road in 2024 when we see two squares that will take place both in August and December between Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. Gemini always has kind of taught me, like, ask why, right? How does this work? Why is it that way? Why do we, believe the things that we believe? What do we think? Where did we get that information? So as you guys start to, kind of feel some of these squares between Saturn and Neptune, you really want to be asking yourself, why? Why do I think the way that I think? What is standing in the way? What's hindering me? What can I not see? Where are my blind spots, literally or figuratively? Okay, Gemini can be cars. So we can see some people who are backing into some stuff, not seeing things coming. And I also anticipate this is going to be lots of issues that can potentially be coming up with transportation and weather events, specifically things relating to water, maybe coastal storms, floods, rainy weather, that kind of stuff. So we really want to be mindful of all weather alerts if there is going to be visibility issues. We can also see that Neptune can be haze or it can be fog. So there can be some fog advisories and issues that can be impacting our ability to get around. Equally, like I said, under the guise of Gemini and information, and talking about things or connecting to people or agreeing to things, read the fine print, because as we see squares between these two signs, there can be a tendency to commit to something without getting all the details. There can be vague conversations and things that can be flat out illusions in some way. So we want to watch out for internet scams, email scams, impersonations, people who are impersonating accounts, things like that can be kind of coming up with these squares as well. Now we will see I think a very fortuitous new moon in the sign of Gemini. If you guys didn't already catch that video on Tuesday, make sure you watch it. Beautiful energy. We're going to see a Venus cazimi that will be happening the day before, but it bleeds into the new moon where the sun, moon, and Venus are all conjunct at 16 degrees of Gemini. So this will be forming a new Venus star point, very similar to the one that we saw in 2020. Essentially, this is a rebirth of Venus. So Venus is, dying in the heart of the sun and being reborn. I think it's rich with opportunities in relationships, setting intentions for love, for money, and better communication. Great news for Gemini placement. However, there is a catch. Venus here has a tendency to be kind of fickle. She has options and choices, and she can kind of go back and forth between, several. And we will also see that that is when the Sun square and Venus square Saturn is building. So it's about a 2-degree square when we have that new moon. I feel like this is where relationship issues come from: a lack of communication or understanding, a lack of empathy for other people, changing our mind, or quite frankly, having too many options. Yes, we can be having some disruptions in love and money, but that's only coming from not getting clear about how we want to be loved, what we value. We can see some ghosting issues. We can also see lack of communication or, clarity when it comes to where relationships are going. So trust me, guys, pay attention to these aspects as they come up. The beginning of the month is going to be much better for communications. It'll ease up a little bit at the end of June as well. Now, outside of that Venus cazimi, then we will see a Mercury cazimi. So there are so many opportunities for grand reveals, epiphanies, important conversations, connecting intuitively, and having downloads or opportunities to feel inspired to speak out, write something, learn something, share, or make a big statement. Mars will be entering into the sign of Taurus, and so this is going to be interesting. I do think Mars is going to chill a little bit here. Mars will be leaving Aries and moving into the fixed earth sign of Taurus, which is a Venusian sign. So on one hand, when Mars was moving through Aries, it was very much about initiating things, getting things done. It was like, get out of my way type of energy. So it can be nice to kind of see that simmer down a little bit in Taurus. But I do feel like, Taurus is about slowing down, stopping, and smelling the roses. So Mars is only going to be kind of incentivized to get things done if it feels good, if it's comfortable, if it's going to produce resources, if it's going to be benefiting, relationships or financial situations in some way. Mars is traditionally associated both with Aries as well as Scorpio. So when we see Mars go through its opposite sign, Taurus, it can be a little sluggish. It needs to be incentivized. So some of us might feel like we're kind of dangling a carrot, on the end of a stick, trying to get people to kind of get with the program. But I do think that this journey now is moving into Taurus, and it's bringing us an opportunity to really feel passionate about the things that we love. And I think that's the positive side of this. I think the new moon in Gemini is about that as well, talking about the things that we love. And love kind of being a verb. So it's like we have to actually show love. We have to take action when it comes to our relationships and our resources as well. This is important because Mars rules the North Node in Aries. So now it's second house to that particular sign. So it has more of like a financial flair. Now, one thing that's going to happen throughout this particular transit of Mars in the sign of Taurus, which will be about 6 weeks, is right off the bat, we're going to see some bumps in the road. We will see somewhere around mid-month that Mars will form a square with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto's now retrograde, but this is a fixed square, so just a word to the wise for my Aries and my Scorpio risings. Equally, if you have any placements at the early degrees of the fixed signs, watch out. This is quite a dynamic energy. Pluto squares definitely bring conflict and power struggles and combativeness. So likely, I think in this situation, the astrology will prevail. Pluto is going to be in a superior position. So Pluto in Aquarius is representing some kind of collective power or transformation of power, reorganization of power perhaps, and the impact that that's having on the financial markets, on all of our banking institutions, our resources. This is where politics are majorly influencing or affecting money, and vice versa. So we're going to see a little bit of that. Mars wants to fight and it wants to stand up for something, and it is a little bit of a spitfire. It's a younger energy versus Pluto, Lord of the Underworld. So Pluto's not going to be taking any slack from Mars. We do see issues with heat, with speed. Potentially some dangerous or deadly situations can arise here. So it's not a period that you want to be combative with other people, and you want to be really careful when you're dealing with blades or anything sharp or anything connecting to self-defense, firearms, that kind of stuff, because it is a bit of a tricky angle. And then finally, we're going to see a full moon in Capricorn later in the month. This full moon is going to be at the 1st degree of Capricorn, and that is with Saturn getting ready to turn retrograde. So about a week later, Saturn will retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Basically, full moons in Capricorn bring attention to our responsibility, our career, our long-term goals, our reputation. So you want to know where both Gemini and Capricorn are in your charts this month, because that's where you're going to be seeing these lunations. pay attention, okay? Because what we're gonna see is that in July, there will be a second full moon in Capricorn. So this is not a drill. This will be a full moon that will eventually become a blue moon next month in the month of July at 29 degrees. This will be a full moon that's unusual because it's a blue moon, and it's going to be conjunct Pluto that is retrograding in the sign of Aquarius. It's coming back into Capricorn. So it's possible that we're really having to look at what's going on with Capricorn in our chart the next 2 months, where we are working hard, what's going on in terms of our long-term goals and our reputation and career. I think with that full moon that will eventually be conjunct Pluto, and then, Pluto retrograde, end of old systems, things that we have been kind of dealing with, old demons that we've been dancing with for a while that have been terrorizing us or creating lots of challenges or delays for us for a long period of time. We got to go back and we got to kind of finish that chapter out. So that's the long and short of it. Eventually we will see, Venus is going to go into Cancer. Mercury is also going to go into Cancer as well. In the later part of the month, as planets are moving through Cancer, we have Cancer season. We will talk a little bit about the solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're going to have the summer solstice, so we are going to be having the beginning of our summer season. And those of you guys in the Southern Hemisphere and those parts, you guys are going to be experiencing your winter. So I hope you guys are having good weather. And that's it. So we're going to go through all of the transits that I think are most important. You guys can also find these dates in the description below. If you click see more, there will be a drop down that will give you all the information to my links, like my courses, my website, all the other things that I have. But if you go a little bit further, you'll find all of these dates. Equally, I have digital calendars on my website, so if you want a personalized digital calendar for your transits for the year, or if you'd like to pick up one of the ones that I created, that's a general transit calendar, you guys can find those. It's a great way to support me, and also it kind of has them in a handy place so you can kind of reference this as you go. But just as a tip, my favorite days, or the best days, I think this month, are going to be the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 26th. I like those days. Those are days where we're seeing some really nice and really sweet aspects. And then the days that I feel like are going to be a little bit more challenging are going to be the 8th, 9th, 11th, 16th, 17th, and the 20th. All right, so let's get into the transits that I think are the most important for the month ahead. Now, you guys are probably watching this at the end of May, maybe the beginning of June, depending on when you're watching this. But we're going to take a look actually on the 2nd and why I think the 2nd is such an awesome day. So on this day, we have Jupiter that's now in Gemini, amplifying everything from traveling, learning, languages, connection, gadgets, forming a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. So this is really expanding something about the depth of our conversations, our friendships, our goals, and where we're all going collectively. I think the good news is that with Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, a lot of people are talking about how things are breaking down or decaying or not working, or how things have kind of come to this point where it feels very critical. And it's at 1 degree. So it's a degree that's associated with Aries. So it's about how all of us personally are experiencing these kind of like death and rebirth periods in our lives, and what we're hoping to achieve and what we need to change about the future. And it's trining Jupiter in Gemini. So it's incentivizing through this pressure for all of us collectively, for us to communicate, for us to talk, to work well under pressure. It's a wonderful time for, trying to really tap into the power of Pluto. If you're wanting to send out a newsletter, if you're wanting to gather up the troops of friends and make plans to travel, if you're wanting to sit down and write something important or sign an important contract, can be a decent time for doing these things. The very same day, we're also going to see Mercury, which is, connected to Jupiter. Mercury is going to be coming into a sextile with Neptune, and this is a sweet but kind of soft aspect where Neptune at a critical degree represents tapping into our intuition, our visions, our dreams, what we're finally willing to kind of let go of or dissolve, and really feeling into that. Mercury in Taurus is like, okay, I've thought about it, and like now I've made up my mind and I feel set on this. And this is a day where we're letting our intuition kind of guide us a little bit. So that factored in with like a Jupiter-Pluto trine makes me feel like this is the day where you're like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and write my book, you know, or now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write that letter to somebody, or I'm going to come up with a game plan for something. And we're navigating it in a way where we're very, very tapped in. So I like this day. On the 3rd, the next day of the month, we are going to see Mercury then come in for a trine with Pluto. So kind of like the 2nd and the 3rd, because we are feeling that that trine very strongly between Jupiter and Mercury and Pluto. They're kind of one and the same. The only thing that's going to be the catch is with this day that the moon will square Pluto. So, you know, some of you guys are waiting until like right around the time of the new moon to do your launches and stuff. If that's what you want, that's fine. But know that Mercury trine Pluto is really enhancing and almost like preparing for that, you know, in-depth conversation. It's doing all the research, getting all of the information, connecting everybody, getting some kind of word out about some significant dramatic change that's happening in the collective. I think that, you know, this is a time where also our spidey senses are a lot more sensitive. Mercury is about the messenger and relaying of information and business and things connecting to travel. So as it connects with Pluto, there can be some unearthing of information that we have subconsciously, psychically, something that we've read, something that we've learned, and then we share it with the collective. Like these are kinds of transits that you see where it's like somebody gets really pissed off and they film like a TikTok, or like they have a venting session, you know, on Twitter, and it goes viral, right? Like that's what literally could happen. Like where this collective pressure is building to the point where individuals start sharing, talking about, or maybe reposting some kind of news that comes out that kind of sweeps the internet, and everybody's like, wow, we're all thinking and saying the same thing. And so what the trines between Aquarius and Gemini wants to do is it wants us all collectively to put our minds together, sit down at the table, communicate, and talk about how we are going to actually create change in the future. Make lemonade with these transits. Be mindful that sometimes with Jupiter and Mercury trine Pluto, we can see people who are kind of like tyrants. They can be kind of bullies. There can be some intimidating energies that can come in. Yes, in this next month, we can definitely see issues coming up where news reporters or journalists are being threatened or intimidated, where there is breaking news and information about things that certain politicians or people in the media have said that could be damning. But we need to kind of clear the pipes, right? Transits or trines to Pluto is about uncovering, especially with the retrograde, and making this news known. Where things were falsified or manipulated, that can also come up later in the month as well. Now, on the 4th of June, we're going to see Mercury in Gemini conjunct Jupiter in Gemini, and this is just good news, right? Mercury is in its domicile. Now it has moved into its home sign, where it can multitask, it can walk and chew gum at the same time. It is all about emails and text messages and planning things. But when Mercury comes into conjunction with Jupiter, it is making news bigger, right? It's making headlines bigger, more dramatic. It can be more embellished with Jupiter and Gemini. There can be too many words, too much information, and it can be like, whoa, system overload. But I do think that it is about good news, and something that we will notice, you know, the very next day is that the moon will swing through there and hit Mercury and Jupiter right before we come into the new moon. And so I believe personally that this can be an indication that some kind of news breaks out that's like good news. You know, there is some, you know, reason to celebrate, or there is some positive announcement or something that needs to be made. And it's at 2 degrees, so it can deal with money and resources and banking as well. Very same day, we're going to see the Sun in Gemini conjunct Venus in Gemini. So if you guys have been watching since the end of May going into early June, Venus has been moving very closely side by side with the Sun. This will be a period that will happen over several days. You guys are going to feel this really the whole first week or so of June. But the Cazimi is actually going to take place at 15 degrees. So this is when Venus pulls ahead of the Sun. It can represent a rebirth of Venus. Okay, on the 4th. And it looks like it's going to be actually 14 degrees. I take that back. 14 degrees, and it's right ahead of that. So relationships are being reborn. How we communicate and connect with people are being reborn. It might be about some grand reveal of some kind. Like I said, we haven't had one of these since June of 2020, so you might want to think about what was happening then. while at the same time the North Node was there. There was eclipses there, so it could have been a little bit more amplified. But this is about some realization about connecting the dots between the mental side of relationships and the emotional side of relationships, and trying to have a new way of connecting and relating to other people. Very fortuitous, especially for those of you guys who have Gemini placements around these degrees, or if you happen to be, you know, a Taurus or a Libra rising, it's going to be a little bit more significant because it's involving Venus. I wonder if this is about some new reveals that are coming up, about new cars, new cell phones, new gadgets, some new revamping or maybe reworking maybe of, you know, some media companies or some new duos that are showing up in the world. So you might start seeing lots of content creators coming together and working together that you like, and you're like, wow, that's amazing to see them work as a team. We can also see a lot revolving around, you know, art and language. So creative writers, people who write poetry, if you write music, you know, fashion bloggers, makeup vloggers, all these kinds of things. It's going to be really good for you guys. So yeah, watch for that, because this is a new Venus star point that is emerging. Something that I will say about this degree is that Jupiter will hit it several times. So I think that it's very fortuitous just in that sense that we're going to see in the immediate next year some of these things kind of roll out. Equally, we are going to see Saturn square this degree several times. And so I've kind of encapsulated this kind of like Saturn in Pisces, you know, squaring stuff in Gemini as good things come to those who wait, right? I think I said that in my most recent video, that if you could apply patience and persistence and belief, and also this knowing that, you know, something good is coming, and being more optimistic, right? Jupiter's in Gemini, about the future, and talking and thinking optimistically and focusing on what we love rather than on the lack. That's how we're going to benefit from this. You're going to get further with honey than you are with vinegar, guys. So it's about speaking kindly to other people, trying to remain positive and uplifting, and trying to love our neighbors, and trying to get to know our communities. While there is definitely with Saturn and Neptune an agenda to divide people through racial tension, through religious conflict, through political conflict. Certainly Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, I think, is, you know, very much behind the scenes trying to create some sense of dissolving and like illusions and like manipulation. So really the way out of that is to have conversations, to sit down, to listen to other people, to practice critical listening and also thinking skills. To keep an open mind and try to consider other people before we make assumptions, and to not judge people based off of their background, their race, their culture, their, you know, financial status. So much about Pisces is about trying to be understanding and compassionate to those who are in need. So rather than making judgments about the homeless or the poor or the needy or those who are struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues or anything like that, it's trying to communicate and understand them. And a lot of it is about being like, what do you need? How can I help you? You know, what's gone on here? Rather than jumping to conclusions and being super critical of other people and being dismissive of other people's feelings. Slowing down a little bit and asking the appropriate questions so we can open the door to, I think, having more in-depth conversations and deepening our relationship to our neighbors. We're then going to see on the 8th, then we're going to have some of the tricky transits. This is going to be when Venus is coming into a square with Saturn. So that comes right on the heels of the new moon in Gemini. Okay, so that new moon in Gemini is going to be on the 6th. Go and watch the video. I talk all about it, how the Venus Cazimi is kind of connected to this, and it's about setting new intentions, about learning and communications, basically. We can feel a little challenged or a little hindered with this because of the square to Saturn, where it's like we're not seeing immediate, you know, gratification. We're not immediately seeing the results or getting the response that we want, or it's taking time to communicate and connect, to work through relational issues or to work through any fears or inhibitions that we have with communication. I'm going to tell you guys you're going to miss, you know, 100% of the chances you don't take. So if you don't step up and ask people, hey, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to work together? Do you want to be in a relationship? You know, do you love me? Then, yeah, we are going to see some relationship breakdown. So it's important to ask questions throughout that transit, but a pretty fortuitous new moon, I think. Anyway, on the 8th, we will catch the Venus square Saturn. So This is the day that I would say we do not want to be really pushing relationship stuff too hard. The square is actually going to be at 19 degrees. So this seems to kind of indicate that, you know, it's going to be relationship matters. 19 is Libra. So if you are in a committed relationship, if you have a business partner, if you have clients, if you're married, it can be a little bit more challenging for you. Equally, my Venus ruled charts. So, you know, my Tauruses and my Libras, you know, this is not a time to be pushing relationship matters. Not the best transit for any of the signs to be like, I'm going to get a new haircut, or I'm going to change, you know, something about my style, or I'm going to go and get an aesthetic kind of surgery, or I'm getting married, because there's something not relating about Venus and Saturn. Saturn says, I want, you know, kind of form, and I think in Capricorn, excuse me, in Pisces, it's about sacrifice. So what are we willing to sacrifice for those that we love? What are we willing to give up? Do you have to walk away from, you know, one job to get a better paying job? Do you have to walk away from one relationship to have better self-love and better confidence? So there is something here where there are some hangups with money and love with this transit. And the very next day, you're going to see the sun come into the square with Saturn as well. So you're going to feel that for about a day or two. Something that I will say with the sun and Venus, which is so much about the identity of relationships and where we are and who we're in relationships with, and communicating and talking about that, it's very clear that some of the relationship issues are going to stem from not telling people where our head's at or our heart's at. Not telling people that, you know what, we're going to pass. I don't think we're a match. Or, you know, not giving somebody an answer about whether or not they want to step forward and improve current relationships, or if they want to go on a second date. So I think both the 8th and the 9th with these squares to Saturn, you know, there can be some setbacks, challenges, and disappointments that can come with that. It is stemming from lack of clarity, lack of communication, or lack of transparency, lack of honesty. That can be an issue here as well. So you'll see that sun square that's going to come through then on the 9th. And this is, I kind of feel like, you know, feeling challenged by authority figures, feeling like, especially for me, Saturn in Pisces has felt like this like invisible wall that you just can't break through the barrier. It's like, why does this keep happening? Or why do I have lower energy levels? Or why am I feeling kind of exhausted? Saturn and Neptune in Pisces is doing that. We're so much more, I think, sensitive, and we're so much more empathic with this conjunction that's kind of building between these two planets that we may not realize the impact that that's having on us mentally, right? Gemini, that it's having on our ability to focus, our ability to connect. So much of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces is, I think, is the kind of like the results of the pandemic, in my opinion, where we've been isolated, separated, scared, turned against each other, where we have had to kind of fend for ourselves a little bit. So a lot of people are still shell-shocked from that. Some people, you know, maybe mentally or emotionally, energetically feel like, you know, they are not the same after that. And so there is some relational issues that are coming up that's like really pushing us this month to be like, no, connect, go for walks, meet people, read a new book, like go and, you know, go to a family get together, or, you know, go on a road trip, explore, right? Jupiter and Gemini. But there's a lot of people that are like, oh, it's not safe, you know, or I don't know, you know, people, it's, you know, strangers aren't safe, or we're used to just kind of like staying isolated. So you're going to feel this push-pull, and I think squares are about encouraging us to get out of our comfort zone. So this is where it's mind over matter, right? And we're overriding fear or hesitation or limitation. We know that to get where we want to go, it's going to take time. We got to take baby steps. So we don't need to rush the process, but we need to keep an open mind, and we need to at least communicate and let other people know where we're having some hesitations. Then we're going to see on the 11th, this is definitely a tricky day, because this is where, well, something else I should note about the 9th. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of jumping around. But Mars has entered into Taurus. So Aries and Scorpio risings, pay attention for that. Mars is now moving through that part of the sky. It'll be there for about 6 weeks. Really, money is a motivator. Mars and Taurus. Food is a motivator. Pleasure is a motivator. Stability is a motivator. I feel like this is going to definitely be positive for Taurus and Taurus risings, because it's going to give you more energy to get out and get things done. But I think for the rest of us, where the last 6 weeks we have been definitely a little combative, we've been a little testy with Mars and Aries, but we've been more daring, more willing to initiate new things, more entrepreneurial. We have been more passionate. And there's just been a lot of like fire energy in the skies. So I could see it either way. You know, things will slow down. So unless there is something motivating us or pushing us, you know, Mars in Taurus has a tendency to have like a slow burn. It takes time if you have Mars in Taurus or Mars in the second house to get going. But once you get going, you're like a train. There's no stopping that train. So one thing that you are going to see off the bat, like I said, on the 11th is going to be when, you know, Mars comes into a square with Pluto. So this is a combative, challenging, potentially dangerous, deadly aspect. Mars could quite literally be about military or things pertaining to, you know, men or some kind of like combat activity. Although Mars is moving through a sign that deals with Venus, and well, Venus is over here as the dispositor in Gemini coming into a square with Neptune. So it can mean that some increased prices, costs of goods, food, or resources are happening as a result of some like relational issues with what's going on in the world. Maybe that's the case. Both of these are going to be at 1 degree. So it is a Mars kind of Aries vibe where there is something that is squaring off or defending itself. Traditionally, Mars in Taurus is not very combative. They can be kind of slow to anger, but when they get pissed off, like watch out. So I think this Mars square Pluto is kind of saying like where there definitely is some cuts, changes, slowing down, setbacks in the financial sector, in the banking system, something like that as a result of change and transformation that's coming from the collective. So where enough people collectively with Pluto and Aquarius go like, where's the money going? Follow the money. Or, you know, where are taxes going towards? Or why are they going towards, you know, like endless wars? We can see that there can be some challenges that can come up where, you know, it is kind of putting the pressure on Pluto's death grip when it comes to resources. Not a day to be wielding anything sharp, anything too hot. Be mindful of combativeness. Some of you guys are going to feel this kind of building for a day or two. So it'll kind of range for about 2 or 3 days, you know, before and after this transit. So it's not going to be an immediate thing. But yeah, this is definitely a time to be mindful that there is a collective purge that's going on and some kind of frustration that's building, revolving around finances and resources. All right, so then this is going to take us to the 14th where we are going to see a Mercury cazimi. So we have the Mercury cazimi taking place where, similar to Venus's cazimi, Mercury now will be conjuncting the Sun. Both of them are in direct motion, so there's no retrograde involved, which means there's no real need to go back and do something to yield the results of this or necessarily turn inward. It's just something that kind of appears, in my opinion. Mercury in its home sign, great. The conjunction at 24 degrees, which is a Piscean degree, so it can represent some unforeseen news, unexpected situation, something that was hidden that becomes, you know, visible, is kind of coming out into the world. This is sextiling Chiron, so it can be about healing and health practices. I see this as an intuitive day on tap. You know, if you have a really strong dream or intuition, if you want to take time to meditate, jot down some notes, or if you're feeling divinely inspired to share something that you have kind of channeled with another person, you can. I have a feeling, because we're seeing both a Venus cazimi and a Mercury cazimi taking place in the same sign, that likely some of the information that is kind of coming up is possibly related or correlated to the Venus cazimi that happened earlier in the month. Now, something to think about is that Venus is in Gemini, okay, and it's the dispositor of Uranus, so it can mean that there is some news that's coming up that was not foreseen about what's going on with the global markets, and it is directly correlated and relating to changes or things kind of breaking down in regards to a financial system. That's possible, and like now the news is becoming more available. Here's the problem. When we get from about the 14th on, we're starting to now see planets that are coming into a square with Neptune. So this is where things get cloudy. There's lots of misunderstandings. There can be things that's intentionally manipulated or left out, or things that are kind of scammy and like things just don't add up. You know, they're kind of fishy, right? Pun intended. So you put that together with having that Mercury cazimi at 24, that's a double dose of Pisces energy. So I haven't done a video on that yet because Mercury has still yet, as I film this, to go into Gemini, but just for fun, let's look at the Sabian symbol on that one. Okay, so that's going to be 25 degrees of Gemini. And that is a man trimming palms. The keyword is enhancement. The theme is dedication. The symbol speaks to the effort and pride and workmanship, and that helps an individual make his personal mark on the world. The image of a man trimming palm trees depicts shaping and enhancement of natural resources of man's purposes. The process of trimming dead palms from trees also symbolizes the elimination of those things that have no immediate value or purpose, or burden and impede future growth. Implicit in the symbol is the necessity that an individual become intimately familiar with the raw materials of his work and know how to use them to achieve his goals. At its highest, it represents a special talent for obtaining the cooperation and resources needed to accomplish objectives. Watch for naive satisfaction in making things look good rather than doing the job well. The accent is on cutting back and sprucing up. Your greatest advantage lies in getting rid of excess things you don't really need in your life. Streamline and refine. Remember that sometimes less is more. Guard against wasting valuable time on trivial details or trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Stepping stones are beautification, care, betterment, cultivation, enhancement, perfection, refinement, cutting back, reduction, labor, and effort. Well, when this conjunction happens, the same day, we're going to see the moon that is going to be in Virgo. And I bet you guys dollars to donuts what is likely going to be coming out around this particular cazimi and the square is that we're going to be getting wind of layoffs. Okay, so we've been hearing about this, but there's probably going to be more coming. Because Virgo is in the sign of workers and services, and it's going to square this Mercury, Sun, Venus, and it's going to oppose Neptune. So it's going to be like, whoa, we didn't see that coming. That kind of came out of nowhere. And how that news and information is being spun, and it might be things that were already kind of like brewing, and now it's like, people are finally admitting, yes, we're in a recession. Yes, there is more inflation. Yes, something, is affecting job numbers, and we're going to be like, what? So it shouldn't be a surprise to some people, but I think that this is generally kind of like an indication with some of the brewing squares that, pay attention to how things are being relayed. There can be a tendency to kind of see two sides of the coin or kind of manipulate things when you see like Mercury square Neptune. A lot of it is perception. So there can be a lot of like things that have been said recently in recent years that were on the internet, that were filmed, that were broadcasted, that people are referencing. They're going back and they're saying, well, we're looking at the tapes or this time that you said this, and what do you say to that? People will be like, I never said that, And so there's a challenge of the narrative. There's a challenge of what people have actually said, or people kind of flip-flopping and going back and forth on their stance in regards to tech, in regards to media, in regards to money, right? We're already kind of starting to see some of this stuff out in the world right now, especially as it relates to health and health regulations and laws and mandates and things that have happened where they were like, well, we didn't say those things. And we're like, okay, well, here you are saying it on TV. Like, so what's the deal? Or we never said that when they did. You're also going to probably find that it's going to be financial as well. So where there have been people coming out against certain stocks and investments, suddenly they're for it. Where there's been a lot of, no, we don't want to see growth in relation to crypto because Venus is connected to this and it rules Uranus. No, we've been anti-crypto, and then suddenly it's like, yes, we're pro-crypto. Now we back it and we support it. This could be banks, this could be politicians, this could be news and media people who have been kind of like, not praising, crypto, and then suddenly they're all for it. And a lot of that is because of the ability to flip-flop and change one's mind. So that's kind of how I see some of those aspects. And people who are also skewing something that they've said about relationships or something that they've said about their beliefs, and like kind of getting called on some of that stuff, or that kind of coming to light, documents coming to light, emails coming to light, data dumps and other things where, something is being exposed that was not hidden. It could be secret conversations and things like that as well. All right, so now we're going to move to the 16th of the month, where we are going to see Venus square Neptune. Okay, so it looks like Venus will be the first planet to square Neptune. There we go. And this is at 29 degrees, all right? So critical Venus squaring critical Neptune. 29 degrees correlates and connects to Leo, so it can be about leaders or leaderships. It can be some pretty significant news in Hollywood drama or relating to performers or people who are creative. There can definitely be some lovers' quarrels and lovers' spats, and this is screaming things like, people seeing DMs and text messages and conversations of things that partners are having with other people. Because, Pisces is what's hidden and kind of concealed. And then Gemini is kind of like, wait, you're saying this, but this is what you're doing. It's kind of like, what's going on? So Venus square Neptune can definitely be an energy where there is a tendency for something to be falsified, fake, manipulated in some way. It can be something that is not truly valuable or is not truly committed. So I think of buying jewelry and then finding out, oh my God, it's not real. Venus square Neptune. It can be about, getting catfished and meeting somebody and you're like, oh my God, they look nothing like their user picture. Literally, Gemini could be meeting somebody on an application, and then Neptune can be about somebody who looks nothing like their photos. There's something falsified, deceptive. There's a ton of filters on it. Something's been edited or manipulated. This is not a day that you guys want to be doing anything big in terms of love, beauty, or money, okay? Because what you are hoping to get in the photo probably is not going to be the actual result. Especially if you're, buying a refurbished gadget, if you're trying to buy a car or a used car, if you're, dealing with a relationship with somebody at a distance, or somebody who's in another country in some capacity. There could be some issues with relating over culture or like language. Usually when Venus squares Neptune, we're deceived in matters of love or money, basically. And so that happening factored in with a 29 degree is definitely a day that I would watch out, because something is turning, something is about to break, and it'll be a little bit easier as we start to see planets kind of get into Cancer. Now, at the same time, something else that's happening is Mercury's coming into conjunction, right, with with Venus. So we're intellectualizing, communicating matters of the heart, which we know Venus and Mercury, they can speak very sweetly, they can write beautifully, they have excellent handwriting, and they probably are very eloquent when it comes to speaking or even singing, right? But there is too much trying to pick apart, take apart, figure out what we need, too many options with love. And that is being factored into the square with Neptune. So that in itself, I think, is also another kind of red flag. These are some dating kind of and financial red flag transits for me. And we will see that it looks like Mercury is going to, by degree, come into conjunction with Venus at 29 on the 16th. And then also it'll square Neptune. So it's 15th, 16th, 17th, I would be really mindful of that, because what somebody tells you they're going to do and what they actually do can be two different things. And I'm just, kind of mind boggled at how many 29s are going to be happening in this chart. Because if you look at this, even the moon is going to hit 29 degrees. Granted, it's going to be in the middle of the night on the 17th, 29 degrees of Libra, trining 29 degrees of Gemini, Mercury, Venus, quincunx 29 degrees of Neptune. So there's a lot of things that are kind of changing and breaking down here. And I think the falsified perception of love and money is going to start to become a little evident. The people telling you the market's going to keep going up, it's going to be great, it's going to go up, it's going to be people going wait, what's happening? Why is this not happening? I thought it was safe. I thought things were solid. I thought things were going kind of well. And I keep referencing that specifically because Venus is the ruler of, or the dispositor of Uranus. And Venus is also connected to the South Node. So we're going to see like where people are flippant and like indecisive and they change their mind. And then we realize like, well, they said they love me forever. And like, you know, now they're with somebody else. These issues can kind of come up. So be very careful with love and relationships with these transits. They can be very, very tricky. Then we're going to see on the 17th, Mercury will factor the square to Neptune. So communication, deception, looking at details. People can be flat out dishonest and falsely representing things. So 16th, 17th, 18th, it's kind of in the skies. One thing we will see is that the Mercury-Venus conjunction will actually happen in Cancer. So it looks like that's going to be happening very early morning on the 17th of June, where Mercury's moved into Cancer. So now matters of communication and matters of relating and travel and business are more emotionally based. It's more about home and family. Maybe we're thinking about and reminiscing about the past in some way. And Venus is in Cancer as well. So this is kind of like warm and cuddly. It is more about our domestic environment. It's more about enjoying the simple pleasures of, you know, our private life. It's great for interior decorating. It's great for family gatherings and get-togethers. I feel like Venus and Mercury conjunct in Cancer is much more about like, well, let's talk about your feelings, you know, versus when it was in Gemini, it's like, you know, the dumpster fire meltdown that's happening with the square to Neptune. So definitely a lot of talking about our feelings, working through that when both of those planets are in Cancer. But this is a sign that's ruled by the moon. So it's also going to be about reflecting on, you know, the past and what has happened. And I noticed that the moon will be in Scorpio when this happens. So it looks like there's going to be trines here where people are kind of like reeling or recovering and like talking about their feelings. And it can feel like an emotional release basically when we have that conjunction. Obviously, you know, Mercury is the faster moving planet. So, you know, for my Mercury ruled people, like my Virgos and my Gemini risings, you know, that conjunction to Venus is sweet for you guys, right? It's a good thing. For those of you guys ruled by Venus, my Taurus and my Libra risings, Mercury coming into conjunction can basically mean that somebody's coming to you with information or with a contract or something they want to talk to you about or they want to kind of like work through. So just be mindful of that. That's going to take us now to the 20th, which, at least for me here in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the first day of summer. This will be the summer solstice. I'm sure at some point I will talk to you guys about this chart because I do like to kind of assess it and look at what's going on for the year ahead, or I guess I should say the season ahead for the next 3 months. This is a 0-degree Cancer point, so it's a cardinal axis point, so it's initiating and bringing in. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, summer. You guys in the Southern Hemisphere, it's going to be winter. It doesn't matter because you can use the signs interchangeably. One thing that I will note is that this is going to be a time that is ruled by, obviously, the moon. And the moon's going to be in Sagittarius. So it is giving us a more optimistic, open-minded, happy, you know, kind of learning, exploring type of vibe. We've got Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in the same sign under the beams of the sun. So we're really super focused on, you know, like talking about our homes, our values, our beliefs, you know, when it comes to our home country. That moon's going to be square Saturn. So that does represent some relational issues, especially about belief and philosophy. We're also going to be seeing that these planets are starting to come into a square with the North and the South Node. So Cancer season will be interesting because there's definitely a turning point that's like, okay, do you want to stay in the past or do you want to, you know, focus on the future? We'll talk more about that, but just know that, you know, the solstice points, because these energies are balancing things out, right? Especially, you know, this is about basically now ushering us into some longer days, right? And focusing more on the element of, I guess, eventually fire. That'll be summer, at least here. But Cancer is a cardinal energy. So it is about creating the cradle, creating the space, the home, the womb, the security center, the container for our emotions. So that way love can grow, right? Leo comes next. Creativity can grow. Children can grow. New opportunities come from taking chances. And a lot of this is based off of that emotional impulse that we have, this knowing of what we need to protect and what we need to be taking care of and working on. I'm liking some of the sextiles to Mars. I think that's at least helpful, but very disjointed with some inconjuncts that are happening to that moon. It almost looks like the moon is almost in a yod. Let's see here. Almost, not quite. It's a little too wide. But if you guys get what I'm looking at, usually that would have to be much tighter aspects, the sextile between the sun and Mars and then pointing to the moon in Sagittarius, but it's a little too wide for that. So, you know, the moon is 6 signs away from Cancer, right? So it can be talking about what we're learning about health, what we're learning about positivity, about education, about, you know, travel, culture. So we'll take a look at that probably in the future. Is there something else going on that day? No, we're good. So we're going to move to the 21st, where we are going to see Mercury in Cancer will sextile Mars in Taurus. So where communication, emotionally relating, and action is kind of working together. So when you have Mars sextiling Mercury or vice versa, it's basically saying like a little bit of direction and communication. And I think especially in Cancer, being more emotionally tapped in really can help us focus on our drives and desires and what we're hoping to achieve and bring in. Short, soft, sweet aspect, but still worthy of working with nevertheless. On the 26th of the month, Mercury in Cancer will trine Saturn. So I can tell you guys wholeheartedly, this is when communication gets better, okay? Because, you know, if Mercury is about communication and connection and Saturn is that strong, firm foundation, then if you guys had a bunch of like issues mid-month with communication, this is when it should settle out. So let's say you couldn't sign your contracts, you couldn't make your agreements, you couldn't launch your websites, do whatever you wanted to do at the beginning of the month with the dates that I recommended. When you start to see Mercury come into a trine with Saturn, it's like plans, contracts, agreements, everything seems to kind of align. And this will be at 19 degrees. Saturn's getting ready to retrograde, so it's getting ready to station. So something about the 26th and the 27th and communicating and talking about your feelings and your plans and also emotional boundaries, guys. This is a big thing. It's like, we're going to talk a lot about this during Cancer season as planets are going through the sign of the moon, which is emotions, and trining Saturn about being like, you know what, this is what's not okay, or this is what I allow in my home, this is what I allow in my house, my heart, my life, my space, because vibes are a real thing with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. We're a lot more aware of the impact that has on all of us emotionally. So that's a good day for communication. I think that's why I put that on my list. Then on the 28th, we're going to see that Venus will come into a sextile with Mars. So I like that because that's definitely an indication that at least relationship stuff's getting easier. We've got harmony between the North Node and the South Node ruler. So that sextile is basically saying we can work together, you know, and Mars and Taurus is about being able to focus on resources, building, you know, solid structures, things that are going to be connected to the earth and food and money. So with Venus sextile Mars, it's kind of like, okay, we're feeling motivated to plant a garden. We're feeling motivated to, you know, build a deck, right? And I use these because Taurus is the builder and Cancer is about home and family. Now, it'll be in different places for all the 12 rising signs, which is why you got to go listen to your horoscopes. But I'll tell you that relations are easier and what we're building and working towards, especially financially, because this is at a 14, is a whole lot easier with this aspect. And you might feel like just relationships are kind of easing up a little bit during this time. All right, so then we're going to see on the 29th, the 29th is Saturn's retrograde. Okay, so Saturn will turn retrograde at 19 degrees of Pisces. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's going retrograde until November, and I think it's going to retrograde back to 12 degrees. So if you are Saturn ruled, so if you are a Capricorn or Aquarius rising, your chart ruler is going retrograde, so you want to be mindful of that. You know, if you're a Pisces, Sun, Moon, or Rising, Saturn's retrograding in your sign, so you need to know what's going on with that and how that's impacting you, your body, or your goals because of the 11th house connection. But when Saturn retrogrades, we're reevaluating structures in our life. We're reevaluating something about our commitments, about how much time we're investing in things. And it's retrograding at 19 degrees, reevaluating relationships. It'll be, like I said, retrograde to the fall. You know, it's interesting that it's going retrograde with some trines from Cancer. So we might be looking at what's happened in the past and it's influencing the decisions that we make in the future. Certainly with Saturn retrograde, we do feel things ease up a little bit, but I like to use the example of you're in a classroom, you're taking an exam, right? And the teacher walks out of the room. Just because the teacher has walked out of the room does not necessarily mean that the class can go crazy, right? Or that you can be cheating on your exam, or that, you know, you can be sneaking out of the class or whatever. Like, the good students are going to stay. They're going to stay the path. They're going to keep taking their exam. They're going to keep to themselves, finish what they need to do, and they're going to wait. They're not going to get distracted. Because when Saturn goes direct, we are going to feel the effects of what we have done basically June through November. So you got to stay the course with that. So Saturn going retrograde, we're doing that deep work. We're reevaluating, you know, some of the places where we don't have enough boundaries, Saturn and Pisces, where we need more faith, we need more patience, we need more vision. We need to also dissolve some old things before we start something new. So for some of us, it's about completing that before we kind of set these new things in motion. The very same day on the 29th, we are going to see Mercury in Cancer sextile Uranus, which can be an opportunity for feeling mentally stimulated in a good way, bright ideas, downloads, insights, being able to kind of be very sharp and I think intuitive to what our needs are, where we can actually reorganize, reassess, and figure out what is best for us and then go and build it and make the changes. The emotional impact in our resources and how we communicate and talk about, you know, feeling safe and secure and getting our needs met. That's basically the long and short of it. On the 3rd of the month, Mercury enters Gemini. On the 8th of the month, Mars enters Taurus. On the 16th of the month, Venus enters Cancer. On the 17th of the month, Mercury enters Cancer. And on the 20th of the month, the Sun enters Cancer. So like I said, round about the 3rd week, that's when we start getting into all the Cancer energy. And then that's all kind of moving, you know, Sun, Mercury, Venus into that particular sign. Throughout that, you'll see some sprinkles of some squares to the north and south node. And in my opinion, it's like where emotions are holding you in the past. They're holding you back from moving forward, or where there needs to be a sense of tapping into our emotions, our home and our family to actually make headway. You know, we've already initiated some stuff in Aries season. Now it's like, okay, how do we feel? You know, or what are we protecting? Or what do we need to be focusing on before we go and move into Leo season, which is going to be pretty loud. Watch for that new moon in Gemini on June the 6th and that full moon in Capricorn, the first of what will be two, and that'll be taking place on June the 21st, and that'll be at 1 degree, so it's the beginning of Capricorn. So we get like a full moon that's about the beginning, and then next month it's going to be about the end. That's the month at a glance. I hope it's helpful for you guys. I know it's a lot of information, so you can, like I said, copy the dates or you can come back to this. But I'd love to hear your guys' insights and how you're feeling with this, you know, particular month ahead. What days do you guys like best? Are you planning any major launches? Are you making any major announcements? With some of the trines between, I think, Mercury, Jupiter, and Pluto at the beginning of the month, I know I might be using those transits for that. So until next time, I'll catch you guys all back here. And I'll see you guys at the end of the month of June, and we'll kind of reassess and see how things went. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you soon. Take care.